Good afternoon, everybody, for the last session in the split streams at AusCERT 2020. For this final session, we have Simon Stahn talking about the information heroes, architecture and governance and security. Hopefully they can bring evil to the information foes, and well, they can bring the evil information foes to justice. And Simon will be trying to do this presentation as a live whiteboard. So we'll see how this goes. Everybody wish him luck and welcome Simon to the stage.
Cool. Great, I'm assuming that's working and you can hear me. If you can't, I'm looking at the chat window.
Good, you are
Eric,
good to go, Simon.
Hey. Yep, everyone can hear, good. I'll be keeping an eye on the Q&A. Like, in case there are any questions, just drop them in there straight up. If I see them, I'll try and answer them. Let me just flick over. Great, so anyway, hi, I'm Simon Stahn. I'm a consultant for Adrenaline Group. I help diagnose and define issues and problems in orgs from the board down to the working project level. I also then usually get down and help fix what we found inside the organization. I focus on 3 different areas, which ultimately overlap and all make sense, to me at least. The areas of information, identity, and business intent. So I did have a co-presenter. She was an information management and governance specialist, Karen Davey-Thorpe, but she couldn't unfortunately make it today for personal reasons. So because we'd done some pre-recording and cutting up of how we were going to do the presentation, I've had to just rejig it. So please bear with me if some things don't quite flow as they should, because it has been a little last minute and I can't do the governance piece in the same way she can. So what's this talk all about? Well, a lot of this conference, quite rightly, is focused on cybercrime and protecting, against the likes of those criminals and hackers and all of that side of things. And this is all good. It's also been about minimizing and mitigating cyber risk. It's what we're here for. But, to me, there are some other things, If we think of heroes, what do heroes do? Now, if I take my cue from comic books, none of which are so beautifully drawn as Mandy's, they're either defending, the heroes that defend, so SecOps, CERT groups like AusCERT, all the different CERTs and Intel groups, incident responders, it's all in the defense, category, or they're avenging. And those can be lawyers, law enforcement, and please, as others have said, don't go hacking back. But it's that sort of side of things. And if we have the heroes, to defend or avenge, who do they go against? Well, it's against foes. And this is actually where I should start using my whiteboard. Now, I've got it. Come on, technical issues. Technical demons be gone. Now, let me just check that you can see. Yes, hopefully you can see everything there. You probably don't need to see me. So, bear with me while I...
It is actually nice to see you though, Simon.
You want to see me? Okay. Let me just put the picture-in-picture back on. And let me know if I draw over it. As in draw over myself. Unfortunately, I can't like fluoro my face. But, I can try. And if the pen... Come on. Pen. Love technical issues. Pen. That makes life a lot harder. I'm not typing this. That is not what we call a working whiteboard. And it was working just in the demo. Embarrassing. Let me try and reset that. Give it a bit of charge. In the meantime, I'll keep talking. So we have heroes to defend or avenge you, avenge for you against the foes. Now the foes, we can have active attackers, the hackers, the nation states, all those types we've already covered here at AusCERT quite a lot. There could be competitors actually that, are your foes, but actually you're probably better off, teaming up with them. Just like in this community, I mean, people work for different competitors and yet you can all go out and have some drinks, have some chats and, formulate good strategies of dealing with the proper foes, as in the active attackers. And then we've, look at the insiders and, contemplate the insider threat. But, they're more of an active attacker, and they're more based around your running systems. What about the projects you're trying to get live? Where are who are the heroes and foes here? Likewise, excuse me. So let's just step away from the heroes and the foes for just a moment and look at some context for, projects. So as a consultant or contractor, I'm usually brought in to address a problem or figure out a way to get a project delivered. No whiteboard. Yeah, I'm just waiting on this little pen and there it works. I do believe it ran out of capacitive charge because I was doing some demo work before. So what I was going to look at were your heroes and your foes, but we're now moving down and we'll get some context done. So we step away from them for a moment. I'm a consultant. I come in, I look at, what is the problem? How do we get it delivered? Often projects, when I come into a place, either as a contractor, brought in as an internal resource, or as a consultant, as an outside entity that's joining in to help you fix something, I get the thing, it's like, oh, the board has given us this audit finding, or, we need more of the cybers to be successful with this project, or even our current cybersecurity vendors are crap. We need to do something. Now, none of these are actually a problem statement. They're all symptoms of the problem. They're not the problem itself. For this talk, I'm actually going to just ignore a few of the market drivers, like vendors selling you more product, because we can actually handle that by defining requirements more properly before you go to market. But in this current pandemic situation, we can't ignore other drivers like time, budget, resources, and skill constraints. They're just, all of them are getting tighter as COVID drags on and on. And they're certainly not helping, get any security products, security projects I know getting actually delivered and operational. So there's two things we actually need to ask ourselves to actually define a problem, which, that problem statement then becomes the input to a running successful project. Questions are, what are we protecting and why are we protecting it? So this is where I go back to my whiteboard. What are we protecting and why are we protecting it? So these are the two fundamental inputs, and this just provides a lot of context. So, if you don't know these two questions about your project, how can you actually communicate that with a wider team, or how can you actually communicate that with your heroes? How can you work? So at a high level, what we're protecting is usually defined as the information assets. That's a nice quick throwaway infosec line. Oh, we protect the information assets. And the why is pretty much so the business can keep on doing the business that it keeps doing. But if you dig down a touch further and try and get people to tell you exactly what those info assets are and, who accesses them, all the other stuff, you just get the sound of crickets. There's just nothing. So, but when you finally do get around to knowing what the what and the where, you know how each asset is useful, how it's valued, who should be allowed access, you still need the supporting contextual why from the org. So why does that asset actually exist? Because then you can actually decide if this asset is something you need to keep, enrich, protect, and maybe even archive and destroy, or actually are you better off without it? Is it transient data that's doomed to be forever stuck in your systems, basically there to inflate some storage vendors' revenue, quarterly revenues? But this is easy to just sort of talk about and scribble on a board. But the reality, when you're dropped into a new project, how can you figure all this out? How do you get to the bottom of the what and the why? Who can help us with this huge task? This is not something we can do alone. We need some heroes. Where are they hiding? So let me just scribble a few more things on here that I just talked about. Info assets. Now I'm out of the groove of drawing. The what and the why. So why do these exist? Right, just checking the not participants, but the Q&A. Anyone got anything? Nope, not yet. Needs more dragons. Thanks, Mandy. I will get to the dragons. It takes me too long to draw them. So recognize all your heroes, they're all around us. Recognize you need a team from multiple disciplines. You need to find and engage and leverage these people with the skills and knowledge of your organization, because you'll find that they're the ones that have what is often termed organizational wisdom. They're the ones, they know where to go for things. They know who deals with what. If Karen was here, she'd actually take you now through the Dharma Dembok wheel, and I will just flick over so people can actually see it once. Let me scroll this. So if you go to dharma.org, you will actually see this wheel. Now, from a data management perspective, they look at projects and they say, you need to cover all these areas. And you'll notice security, data security is just one of them. There's quality, there's architecture, there's design, there's modeling. There's all types of different pieces to this puzzle. Now, a lot of people think they know everything, but when you start going through this wheel, you actually think, well, actually, I know about all of that, but I'm not a data warehousing and business intelligence specialist. So where can I find one in the org? So that's where that wheel really does help. But, looking for the roles, which roles have the knowledge and the information? And let's just sort of stay at the moment inside that ICT sphere, ICT security. So we'll touch on some key roles here, and I'm going to keep a very close eye on the time. So we'll start with the architects. So there's plenty of different flavors, and these can be, we'll park these under heroes, shall we? There are plenty of different flavors of architect in every organization, and everyone has different knowledge and different experience. And if you're lucky, a lot of architects have actually worn different architecture caps, so they can actually point you to other people and artifacts you didn't even know existed in your org. Information architects, info architects, they deal with data models, enterprise information models, business integration, content management, and importantly, they should know where the sources of truth are. And by that, I mean the sources of truth for the data and information. Information security architects. Now, I'm sure we have a few people in the audience here who are information security architects. So where do they sit? What do they do? They sit between the information architects, really, there, and the security and the privacy people. Countdown timer. Okay, sorry, just seeing big flash up on my screen about a countdown timer. They sit between the security and the privacy people, and they try and ensure that the policies, the standards, patterns, blueprints, let's put standards, blueprints, all of that stuff is adhered to. And what does this define? This defines some knowledge around the info assets. These are also, the information security architects are also the people you should probably go to start with anyway, about regulatory requirements on your data valuations, classifications, and labeling schemes. They should be able to help you also with the identity side of things. Let's just change color. Over here, we have the information architects. Under the Y, we probably also want to find out who is allowed access. So these people should be able to talk to you about that one. They should be able to talk to you about, put it here, regulatory requirements. So yeah, the identity side. Note that the information architect, information security architects should probably also do some assurance work so they can help you out there and finding compliance bits and pieces. Moving on, the enterprise architects, and I'm not writing that word out full because it's a whiteboard. The enterprise architects can vary widely between organizations. They're meant to be on top of what in EA work, ooh, that's a nice line. In EA work, ooh, whiteboard's going crazy. They sit on top of the business, the data, the application, and the technology landscape. Okay, so Whether they're fully on top of all of that landscape or not is up to, after you've had a chat, you'll know. But they should know pretty much everybody in the business, from those who understand the business units, to those actually running the infrastructure. And importantly, they'll know the non-IT folk, those out there doing things like asset and fleet management, or, dealing with scheduling with actual clients or things like that. Ideally, they should be able to give you a solid overview of the entire business and its people, including the criticality of each core area and their high-level business process, which actually brings me to another oft underutilized discipline in a lot of projects these days, which is the business analyst, or we just call them the BA. If you think about information, it's not just really a point in time. It's through the continuum of the organization. It doesn't magically appear, it's created. Granted, if you have some major security holes, it may just appear and it may just disappear, but looking at it from the way it should work, it should just slowly build up. It is created, and it's created as part of a business process. So if you look at the good old consulting thing of people, they do process that uses technology or tools. Process, over there, I'm going to use my fluorescent lighter because it's cool. Process is what is your business. People or things do a process. And I say things because IoT gets involved these days as well. So it creates, reads, uses, or destroys data and information. Without that process, we'll get a bit more highlighting on it, there is no business. Okay, a lot of people think it's the people in the business, but the people do the process. That combination alone can be your business, but typically people use tools and tech to actually do it.
Just an update there, Simon. You're right over the top of what you're drawing. Everything down to the top of process is covered by you.
Thanks. That screen's a little bit hidden from me, otherwise I can't keep all my things on. So, yep, thanks. I'll just move that window over a bit. Good. Squeak that one a little bit. So they should know the business process, and importantly, they should know both the current and the planned processes, because if you go off on a tangent and the business is already doing some processes or other projects that go in different tangents, you're going to run into troubles. So you can work with them to understand information creation and usage within your project. So now you know where your information is being created and used, and you probably have a good lead now on who's actually doing, those people in here, those people, what are they actually, who are they, and what are they doing? Which brings us to the information and cybersecurity people. It's their job to be on top of the safety of the information in the organization. We're just going to hide the people, process, tech thing. So these people here are very much concerned with the info assets, including, now I'll draw them to the regulatory one as well. So they're concerned about the safety of this. So we now know what the information is, why it's come into existence, who creates and uses it, and we know probably just enough, dollar values. Actually, we should put valuation around here. What's the value of your data? Is it worth keeping? That's a good question. So what the information is, why it's come into existence, who creates and uses it, and we know enough to start to assess and protect it. So having the context around the information actually lets us also do nice things on a sort of per data object or information set. We look at it and label it and classify it. The privacy people, they definitely want to know as much as they can about personal information, because it's quite scary when you go into an organization and you ask a few key questions and you find out there's a bunch of personal information which is sitting in systems, healthcare, government, whatever systems. It's going along just fine, but they take a copy and put it into Excel, which sits in their file folders, and it goes out on laptops. And next to that, they've actually not just the personal information, but I've just recently run into where they have all the credit card numbers for the auto bill. And they know that's wrong, and they know PCI, but otherwise I can't do my job. And especially in COVID times, they can't do their job. They're going to get either fired or the business doesn't get enough money in. But anyway, so having this context won't actually stop data getting lost, but it does help with defining ownership and accountability, which is important, obviously, to valuing the data You know, we know how critical it is to the business, but also obtaining budgets these days to actually go and protect it. You know, and knowing these things early on in your project's life, knowing everything about you can about those info assets is very important, because the last thing governance and assurance people want when you get there during delivery are actually surprises. Nobody wants it. So before you go and talk to governance, projects, and all the other teams, it's wise to actually have this knowledge not only in your head, but documented. Just keep an eye on PPTI. Yep, EA, good. BA, EA. Just looking down the chat list. Yeah, people, process, technology, and info assets. Yep, our classic one. So also working in any classified environments, you very much need to know what the classification is of all the data and how it's changed. There are also two factors for those who are not that into the security valuation side, which is aggregation and association. If you have any data scientists who can absolutely be heroes in your org, they will play with rather large data sets and they will actually start cross-referencing between them. You know, they can open up some great opportunities for the business, but you've got to weigh that up against the risks on many different levels. The only way to truly impact assess, you know, the data and the risks around it is to know everything you can about the context, the what and the why for everything. Let me skip on. So I'm skipping over some bits that Karen would normally do, also keeping an eye on time. How long do we have? Till 2:10, so we've got 10 minutes. I can do it. Yep, camera's still up. Sorry, I just had one of my cameras beep at me for some reason, so I'm just checking I'm still on. Yeah, it's important of information ownership. You can't own a risk. You can't, you know, assign it to somebody and thus get budget for it unless you actually know who the owners are, who's accountable for it. You can't just go, oh, it's the CEO. It doesn't quite work like that. Ultimately, yes, there'll be somebody up there, CIO, CTO, somebody who's going to get their butt kicked if you lose it. It won't probably be you, though you might get swept out in that, you know, thing. Anyway, we'll move on. Trying to quickly get through this. You'd also be wise. One of the cameras, yeah, just so you know, I can switch over, go different one, go that way. No, we'll stay there. We've already touched on the data scientists who are looking for information enlightenment, university researchers in certain organizations in places you wouldn't necessarily expect them. Like I've worked with hospital bills where suddenly you realize they're tied into universities and you have the whole EDU nets that are coming in and video streams going out, huge ways for data to come and go in paths you didn't even know. Owners, yep. So data scientists, researchers, but also think about developers. Developers often will take a large copy of data because they need to play. And if they're not given like anonymized data that's properly anonymized, different conversation, different talk, you know, they may accidentally leak it. I mean, we all know about the S3 developer buckets that have been, you know, exposed recently. So you now know some of the parties involved. You know, there's going to be these. Now, I will just note a couple of others that I just spoke about. The devs, the data scientists, let's put data science. Sometimes knowing your comms and PR people is very important. And I don't think we have any in the chat because the one I know has bailed, but lawyers. You do need to know what lawyers are in your organization and HR, because if you make changes to anything that affects the users and that they have to do differently, you could have unions involved, you need to retrain people, all these bits and pieces, that all has to go through HR and obviously any training organizations. Lawyers, anything you do that goes in and out of the organization, you need to know about, especially on the privacy side of things. That's getting more and more important. And these conversations take up probably a good quarter of the time I spend at the setup of a project is to talk about privacy and legalities of stuff and go, I'm not a lawyer, go and find the one in your organization, or I can point you to one to help. So anyway, we'll move on from there. So how do you actually get on with this now? Well, I heard this in, I think it was JP's talk just before, and I'm going to repeat it because it's very important, and it was my first point as well. High level support and buy-in. If you don't have it, don't worry about the rest of the project. It's not gonna succeed. You just need that high level buy-in. Then you need to sit down with your extended team and manage to palm your whiteboard and get your common goals, common goals sorted out, but importantly also common goal clashes. So if you've got goals in your teams that are pulling you in different directions, get them sorted beforehand. It's far easier to fix up front when you're all having nice discussions than during delivery when it's all going to pot. So any conflicts between the teams and the projects and their goals, these things, sort them out right at the front. Do not move past that step until A, your high level support is working well, and B, everyone's involved and everything's going nicely and you're all playing well in the same sandpit. Next, to list out the action points. I'll put here and clashes. The actions needed. Actions needed versus the skills, not kills. That's a gaming thing. Skills, which will also give you a good direction in the skills gap. Now, here's a little one I drew up earlier, just to keep it very simple. You've got your actions needed across the top: drinking coffee, eating chocolate, writing notes. You got me and you had Karen. And as you can see, we're both pretty good at drinking coffee and eating chocolate. We're pretty bad at writing all the documentation. So, work it out beforehand and make sure you get yourself a flunky to write all the documentation. Don't do it on a whiteboard live like I am. Then get your people engaged. That did not work. Engaged. Yeah, whatever. How? Start by finding the people you want to engage with and say hi. Explain you need their knowledge that only they have. And with everybody you engage with, start with how you mean to go on, which is honesty, transparency, and visibility. If you don't have those three right at the start, not much point going on. You also need a common repo, common repository. Oh man, repository. It can be as simple as a wiki or a table of contents, right? So I've seen it quite a few times. Lots of teams have their own repository. They have file folders, they have SharePoints, they've got custom apps that publish something. But you need to ensure that for your project and for everything that hangs off it, everyone in there can get to everything they need. And that could be, sorry, screen just flashed up. I've got 2 minutes remaining. We'll get there. It could be as simple as a simple wiki or a table of contents, like a single page that points off and references in all the different directions. So all the artifacts and output from all the teams, can be accessible. Sometimes, as I say, creating a basic wiki, you need one place to start searching. Because that's one place, one place you can start understanding, and it's one place to invite others into the team, bring new people in as they join here, start reading here. And it's also one place where they can then add to and share their knowledge. So definitely do that one. However, I'm going to put this in big, no cloning. We don't want the clone wars happening. Make sure that you're not duplicating or cloning information. Link to the source of the truth, wherever you can. You may need to take PDF copies of architecture diagrams or something that's live where you need a license, but realistically, you don't want to solve a knowledge management issue by creating a data management one. So that also leads to the point that don't reinvent the wheel. If an artifact exists, don't rewrite it and recreate it. Okay, I'm not talking about GitHub and pushes, Val. So don't rewrite it if necessary, because somebody's probably put a lot of hard work in and organizational knowledge has been poured into this artifact. And even if it looks a bit dodgy to you, it's probably taken them a lot of hard work and effort to get it that far and get it into a repository of some sort. You know, best way to get somebody offside is to tell them their work's crap. Though you're probably going to tell me mine's crap now here in the chat, so I'm fine with that. Remember, at the end of the project, there should be a bunch of reusable assets for the business to use. So here you've got, hero team. This is the supporting structure or scaffolding for your hero team. So just to recap, you've got your stakeholder buy-in, you've got the people, you've got the common goals, you've got the skills, you've got the action, you've got a common language, you know, that you need to arrive at. So part of the documentation should always be to make sure that the terms you're referencing and all the other teams are referencing are the same terms. Many times halfway through a project, I've discovered that teams are referencing something by the same name that is something completely different. And that will bite your project in the backside. So you've got this common language and you've got this repository. So now get your team of superheroes and you've got your supporting structures and you're ready to deliver. Just remember to add a little bit of extra coffee and chocolate into the mix. You'll be good to go. Thanks. Okay, were there any questions?
Nothing in the official Q&A,
No? Cool.
but I'm sure people have been asking questions as they went, and you seem to have been following along.
Trying to follow along, looking all over the screen and trying to capture it. It's hard to draw and talk at the same time.
Well, it worked quite well, and thank you very much. I think everyone who was here really appreciated it, and I'm sure they can either dump some more questions in the general chat or hit you up later. Ah, look, somebody's actually asked a question.
Where's that one? Sorry.
How do you modernize the role of an enterprise architect to make them more agile?
Oh, that's a very good question. To make them more agile. So if you look at the EAs are often accused of being in an ivory tower, sitting up and looking over everything. So the problem you've got is they get disassociated from the business. And the way to bring anyone who's being disassociated is to bring them back in. So part of this whole working team-wise, if you want to work more agilely, bring them in, start talking through stuff. You know, if you've got people that are slow in terms of, you know, responding and cycling around, it doesn't matter whether they're waterfall or agile, they're still going to be slow at it. So you need to work with those people, use your soft skills if you've, you know, got some handy. Talk to them, see how you can actually get things done. Part of your common goals will be the time, you know, the budgets and the constraints, you know, we spoke about earlier. Make sure that you work through those with everyone so everyone's aware of exactly what needs delivering by when. And then, frankly, you should be able to leave them go to do this. PMs will generally stay on top of that as well. Hope that answers it a little bit.
So my comment before, Simon, is it wasn't just about source code control. It was about everything, whether it's hidden behind your enterprise document management system or whatever it is. You don't want to be trying to manage all of your documentation on a flat drive where everyone does version control by changing the file name. Or
Yep, absolutely. Look, the reality is that you go into any place and they have 101 file folders, 6 million. I've been in places that have literally millions of Excel spreadsheets, and then and most of those are clones of something else. And that's a completely different talk. That's more in just the information space. But, you know, working through that to try and say, well, this is why we point off to the various bits and pieces. So we just create a series of references. And we don't go, okay, we'll take a copy of all of that and put it in our own file folder, and then we'll create a SharePoint, which we're going to clone all this into. No, it should be a series of links or, you know, references out. Sometimes you'll need to embed a couple of high-level images to give somebody a good idea what they're in for, but then reference them out.
And I see what you've just described as part of our job, doing enterprise information security architecture and problem solving and discovering and helping people through their journey, is to actually highlight these issues and try and bring them along for the ride and help them do things the right way.
And we're insecurity as a whole, we are in a unique place where we can actually like help all across the business, because we're about the information assets, we're about the business and securing the process, helping the people and the tech. So we span everything. So we should be able to talk to every one of those people we listed. And I mean, everyone from the developers, the data scientists, the legal and the comms people, everybody in that sphere, get through, talk to them in their language and join it all up, because that's what we in information security have the lovely gift of being able to do, is to talk to all of them and bring it all together. And that's where you have your team of heroes, to stay with the theme.
Great. Thank you very much, Simon. That was absolutely wonderful.
Pleasure.
We just
Thanks.
had one more come in. Oh, yes. How do you make the horse drink the water? I think you just described that, didn't you?
Yeah, sometimes, yes, there is the horse, the water they don't want to drink. Some of that will often be down to organizational politics, and that's something you need to get to the bottom of way early in your track. That's part of that common goals and clashes, because often the horse will pretend not to drink the water when you're standing there watching. You know, you leave. Sorry, Val.
And some of that's clearly making them understand that the water is actually the vodka that they crave, or whatever it is, translating the terminology into what they actually understand.
Yeah, definitely put them through the flea dip first, just before you bring them in. So just looking at the comments there on the side. Cool. Well, I hope everyone. Oh, was there another Q&A up there? 2. Or the knacker's yard. Yeah, good point. Yeah, carrot, stick. Up to you, really. I usually try and use the carrot first, and then I give the senior stakeholders the stick and say, here, the carrot, they're not responding to the carrot, maybe you should wave that around a bit. The projects where we have been the most successful in delivering are where my sponsors, the high-level stakeholders, have been at the C-level, where I get the CFO or the COO to email out and say, here you go, please work with this team of people to give them the answers they need and work with them. This is important to the business. And if the business doesn't have that buy-in, like I said before, if you don't have that high-level buy-in, it's time to go, well, until you do, no point wasting more money.
And I think one of the things you described earlier is making sure everyone has that common language, so defining the dictionary of terms and make sure everyone uses the same language. Anyway,
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
That's wonderful. We're just
Thanks
about
all.
to go back to the common plenary session with the speed debate starting in 9 minutes. So grab yourself a drink of whatever type you like in something suitable, like I've got a good old AusCERT beer glass here, and come back to the speed debate starting at 2:25 in now 8 minutes time.